Let's get one thing straight. The real danger doesn't wear a scowl, it wears a smile. It compliments your sweater, remembers your birthday, and offers to walk you to your car at night. And deep down, it wants you gone. Not metaphorically. Gone. See, hatred is easy to spot. It's loud, sloppy, predictable. But what if I told you the person who truly wishes you harm isn't raising their voice? They're lowering it to a whisper, offering you help, getting closer. Studying you like a test they plan to ace, and you're the final question. Especially after 60, when loneliness makes us softer, the wolves don't knock. They move in. This video isn't for the paranoid. It's for the awakened, for the wise, for the ones who've smiled back at danger and didn't even know it. Because today we're going to unpack 7 eerie signs that someone doesn't just dislike you. They are quietly, patiently planning your disappearance. And the scariest part? They still call you friend. So if your gut has been whispering lately, don't shush it. Light a candle, breathe deep, and stay sharp. Because today we look beneath the mask before it's the last face you ever see. Part 1. The monk who stares more. They don't slam doors, they don't scream, they don't throw punches or set your garden gnomes on fire. No, the truly dangerous ones, they just watch. And not in the way your grandkids watch cartoons. This is a quiet devotional study. A kind of spiritual stalking, like a monk in a silent retreat. Except you're the shrine. We call them the monk who stares. Not because they're wise or holy, but because they practice a creepy kind of stillness. Always watching, never blinking, gathering data with the patience of a spider on Zoloft. You've seen them. You've waved at them. You just didn't know they were building a psychic blueprint of your life. It starts subtly. They remember your dog's name, even though you've never told them. They appear at the coffee shop at exactly 8:13 a.m., just like you do. They don't talk much, but oh, they listen, with eyes like open windows and a smile that says, I've already been inside your house. And because we're kind, spiritual people, especially as we age, we dismiss this as coincidence. Oh, maybe they're just friendly. He's just lonely. She's probably into Tai Chi too. No, dear one. Mara's not just on your shoulder, she's standing behind you in line at the post office. Buddhist teachings often speak of the 3 poisons: craving, aversion, and ignorance. But here's the thing, those poisons don't always scream. Sometimes they offer you a ride home. Sometimes they live next door. We once knew a man named Arjun, 74 years old, a retired dentist. His life was simple. Tea at 6, walk at 7, toast at 8. He thought the new guy in the apartment complex was just polite. Until polite turned into predictable. Every elevator ride, every bench in the park, every aisle in the market, guess who was there? It wasn't fate. It was pattern. And patterns, when intentional, become plans. See, predators aren't always violent. The most dangerous ones are ritualistic. They memorize your world like a monk memorizes scripture. Not out of reverence, but out of quiet, calculated intent. Elder psychology tells us that routine keeps us calm. It gives us safety, rhythm, peace. But to the wrong person, your routine is a treasure map. Every habit becomes a vulnerability. Your yoga class, your pharmacy run, your favorite bench under the tree, it's all intel. And worst of all, they never overstep at first. That's how they stay invisible. That's how they earn your trust. They offer small kindnesses, not out of love, but for leverage. They are the ones who help you across the street and memorize how slowly you walk. The Stoics said, "Be not deceived by the mask. The actor wears it to perform, not to love." The Buddha said, "To know yourself is to be guarded from illusion." So what do? You stay kind, but you stay awake. If someone always happens to show up where you are and their presence makes your belly tighten even slightly, trust that. That's not paranoia. That's insight. Because sometimes enlightenment isn't found in stillness. Sometimes it's found in finally noticing the person who's been still too long and too close. Part 2. The whisper with good manners. They don't shout. They don't argue. They don't threaten to ruin your life. They quietly suggest that you're already doing it yourself. We call this one the whisper with good manners. The person who doesn't just dislike you. They gently dismantle you over tea. With grace. With soft sighs. With the kind of faux concern only a seasoned manipulator can deliver while handing you a warm casserole. This is not gossip, it's spiritual sabotage in pastel clothing. You think you're talking to a friend, But what you're actually hearing is the slow construction of your social coffin. They don't need to accuse you. All they have to do is imply, "Oh, I'm just worried about you. I don't know, they haven't seemed like themselves lately. I love her, but sometimes I wonder if she's slipping." It's not slander. It's a campaign, one waged in whispers. And the battlefield? Your reputation. Elderly psychology warns us that the more isolated a person becomes, the more susceptible they are to indirect aggression, because direct confrontation is rare in aging circles. No one wants to be that elderly troublemaker, right? But the saboteur thrives in this silence. They operate like mold, quiet, slow, and hard to trace until everything smells funny. Take Eileen, sweet woman, 81. Used to lead book club, potlucks, even karaoke night. Until one day, her calls stopped getting returned, her neighbor stopped dropping by, her daughter-in-law stopped smiling during visits. The cause? One friend with a gift for planting seeds. She's been forgetting things. Do you think it might be time for assistance? And just like that, the world Eileen knew began to shrink. Not because of dementia, not because of anything real, but because someone else had quietly rewritten her story. In Buddhism, we call this wrong speech the opposite of right speech, which is truthful, helpful, kind, and timely. The whisperer violates all four, dressed as virtue. Their words seem harmless, but their intention is decay. Ram Dass might say, they don't steal your joy. They just rearrange the furniture in your life until you trip and fall on your own good name. And what makes it so dangerous? You won't even know it's happening until it's already worked. Like karma with a good credit score, it takes its time, then charges everything to your soul. So what can you do? First, if someone's always just concerned, start being concerned about them. Keep records, note patterns. If several people start treating you differently after one person visits, connect the dots. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Because while Buddhist practice teaches us compassion, it never tells us to be stupid. Kindness doesn't mean silence. Awareness doesn't mean paranoia. It means discernment, the kind of clarity that recognizes a whisper for what it is, a knife that says please and thank you before it stabs. So sip your tea, smile back. But if your spirit flinches when they speak softly, trust it, because some people don't need to raise their voice to destroy you. They just need to say the wrong thing in the right ear. Part 3. The hug with hidden teeth. You ever meet someone who makes you feel seen? I mean, really seen. They ask about your childhood. They remember the name of your late spouse. They laugh at all your jokes. Even the one about the cat and the blender that never landed with anyone else. They seem perfect. And that's exactly the problem. Because sometimes the people who rush to be close aren't building a friendship. They're building a file. This is the hug with hidden teeth, the false friend. Not the obvious kind that borrows money and never returns it. No, this one offers to help before you ask. They want to know your schedule, your history, your fears, and not out of love, but out of strategy. Elderly psychology has a cruel twist. As we age, many of us crave connection the way we once craved purpose. We're more open, more trusting, more grateful for companionship. And predators? Oh, they smell that gratitude like pie cooling on a windowsill. You think it's closeness. What it really is reconnaissance. They'll come by every Thursday just to check in. Bring you soup. Ask what medications you're on. You shouldn't be carrying groceries at your age. Let me help you with that wallet, bag. They want your trust, yes, but what they really want is access. And once they have that, they'll slip through every unlocked doorway of your life. Physically, emotionally, financially. We once knew a man named Saul, 82, funny, still did the crossword in pen. He met a woman at a community grief group, said she reminded him of his wife. She laughed when he cried, held his hand at the end of meetings. Within a month, she was calling him her rock. Within 3 months, she had his ATM code. Buddhism teaches us to welcome all beings with an open heart. But it also teaches discernment, the kind of wisdom that notices when love feels too fast, too easy, too symmetrical. Because real friendship unfolds. It doesn't burst in with flowers and a copy of your house key. Ram Dass once joked, if someone tells you they're your soulmate after 2 weeks, hide your credit cards. The false friend doesn't just mirror your emotions. They echo your pain. They tell you their stories too, sad ones. Just enough to make you feel safe. And while you're unpacking your wounds, they're silently labeling them like a surgeon preparing for dissection. It feels sacred. It feels healing. But it's often a setup. So what do? Slow it down. Test the waters. Share something small and see what they do with it. Do they hold it gently, or do they store it away like a weapon? Real friendship respects boundaries. It doesn't bulldoze through them with casseroles and compliments. And if your heart ever whispers, "This feels too good to be true," it probably is. Because not all hugs are for comfort. Some hugs are for placement, to check where your soft spots are before they bite. Part 4. The joke that prepares the knife. You know what's more unsettling than a threat? A threat that makes you laugh. Because when someone looks you dead in the eye and says, I could just strangle you right now, and then chuckles, well, that laugh isn't just air. It's camouflage. It's a test. We call this one the joke that prepares the knife. Because predators know that if they say something violent with a smile, most people will ignore the sting and focus on the punchline. Especially if you're raised to be polite. Or if you're over 60 and don't want to make a fuss. Elderly psychology has a name for this. Boundary erosion through familiarity. And Buddhism simply calls it heedlessness. Living without mindfulness. Ignoring the whispers of your gut in favor of keeping things peaceful. But what if keeping the peace is what lets the war come to your front door? Let me tell you about Frances. Sweet woman, 76, former school teacher, lived alone in a quiet retirement complex. She had a younger neighbor named Craig, friendly guy, always joked around, always just a little too close. He once said, if I were a serial killer, you'd be the perfect target. No offense. She laughed, nervously. He laughed harder. Until one day she came home and found her cat missing. Then a photo on her porch of her taken from behind at the mailbox. No note, just a photo. She called the police. They said it was probably a prank. She bought a lock for her bedroom door. See, escalation doesn't always mean shouting, shoving, or scenes. It's gradual, it's clever, it's coded in humor. That's what makes it so insidious. Because how do you confront someone who didn't mean it? How do you draw a line when the threat is hidden behind a laugh? Ram Dass once said, "Everything in your life is your teacher, especially the things that make you uncomfortable." And let me tell you, these jokes, these weird little comments, they are trying to teach you something. They're offering a preview of what this person thinks they can get away with. It's not just jokes, it's boundary testing. It's spiritual fencing. They're not seeing if you'll laugh. They're seeing if you'll freeze. In Buddhism, we train to recognize Vedana, the feeling tone that comes before thought, the gut drop, the inner tightening, that flash of And if you ever feel that when someone laughs at their own dark joke, don't ignore it. Because your body is often wiser than your logic. So what do? You don't escalate. You don't panic. You observe. Document what they say. Notice when and where it happens. And above all, don't let the laugh hypnotize you. Because people who joke about murder aren't necessarily murderers, but they are telling you what they think is funny. And what someone laughs at says more about their soul than what they post on Facebook. So next time someone leans in close, grins, and drops a comment that chills your bones, don't smile back just to be polite. Sometimes the first stab is made with a joke, just to see if you bleed. Part 5. The Buddha of Patience, who also might kill you. This is the calm one. They don't get angry. They don't make inappropriate jokes. They never raise their voice. In fact, they may be the most helpful, kind, peaceful person you know. And yet, something inside you whispers, don't fall asleep around them. Meet the Buddha of Patience, who also might kill you. This person doesn't want quick revenge. Oh no, they want timing, precision, legacy. They're not interested in hurting you today. They're interested in watching your walls rot quietly over time, until the entire house collapses and they just happen to be there, sweeping the ashes. The elderly are especially vulnerable to this archetype because, frankly, we trust history. If someone has been around for 5, 10, even 20 years without incident, we assume they're safe. But time is not proof of purity. Sometimes, time is just a mask that's been left on long enough to become a face. Let me tell you about Mr. Kenji, retired postman, widowed. He had a neighbor named Paul, helped him with yard work, brought groceries, checked on him after doctor visits, never asked for a thing. Until Kenji got very sick, suddenly Paul was his emergency contact, then his caregiver, then somehow the beneficiary of his life insurance. By the time Kenji's daughter flew in, the will had been changed, the accounts had been transferred. And Paul? He smiled through the whole funeral. You see, patience can be a spiritual virtue or a predator's secret weapon. The Stoics call it delayed advantage. The Buddha called it upaya, or skillful means. And in the wrong hands, both become instruments of control. Ram Dass once said, "If you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family." I say, if you think someone's enlightened, see what happens when they're left alone with your bank statements. This predator isn't sloppy. They don't leave clues. They wait until you do, until you lower your guard, until you're tired, grieving, isolated, or sick. That's when they make their move. And the worst part? You trusted them. They earned it. They kept showing up, kept saying the right thing, kept smiling while calculating your next chapter without you in it. Elderly psychology teaches us that loneliness dulls suspicion. We tell ourselves, but they've been so helpful, even when that help starts to look like quiet possession. So what do? First, slow down big decisions, especially around money, property, and medical proxies. In Buddhism, we're taught not to cling to anything, including our own assumptions, so question them. Second, maintain independent eyes on your life. Adult children, attorneys, spiritual friends, people who aren't emotionally entangled with this helpful person. And finally, trust the moment when your peace suddenly feels rehearsed, when someone's presence feels like a performance. Because it probably is. This is the predator that plays the long game. The one who prays with you today and plans around your funeral tomorrow. Their hands look clean because they've been washing them in your trust for years. So if someone in your life is just a little too perfect, too available, too involved, it might be kindness or it might be choreography. Either way, keep your eyes open, because even the Buddha has a shadow, and sometimes it's smiling with your spare key. Part 6. The gift giver who's buying your grave. Ah, gifts. Who doesn't love a surprise box of pastries, a new plant for the windowsill, or someone offering to pay for your prescriptions, just because? Generosity is beautiful, until it feels like a bribe with a bow. This is the gift giver who's buying your grave, the person who gives and gives and gives until they own everything that matters. Your routines, your trust, and eventually, your choices. Elderly psychology teaches us that many seniors are conditioned by politeness, gratitude, and a lifetime of saying thank you, even when something feels off. We were raised to believe that rejecting a gift is rude. But here's the truth. Some gifts come with strings so long, you don't realize you're being tied up until you can't move. It starts innocently. A neighbor who insists on mowing your lawn. A church friend who keeps bringing you meals. A distant cousin who says, "Don't worry about your bills, I've got it covered." But then they start finishing your sentences. Then answering questions for you. Then speaking to your doctor on your behalf. One day they give you flowers. The next they ask if you've updated your will. Buddhism teaches the power of dana, or generosity. But real giving is free of attachment, free of manipulation. It uplifts without expectation. This isn't that. This is strategic kindness. It's gifting with interest, like a spiritual payday loan, except the debt is your independence. Let's talk about Gloria. Lively 78-year-old, lived alone but well. She had a neighbor named Linda who started as a sweetheart, helped carry her groceries, paid for her cat's vet visit, took her to temple on Sundays. Then came the suggestion, you really shouldn't be living alone. Then, why don't I move in? I'll take care of everything. Then, I've already spoken to the bank, don't worry about a thing. Gloria didn't realize she'd been adopted into a one-woman cult until her granddaughter visited and found Linda wearing Gloria's bathrobe and answering her phone. Ram Dass would have called it spiritual identity theft. A type of love that wraps you so tightly you forget how to walk alone. So what do? First, ask, are the gifts empowering you or replacing your autonomy? Second, does the generosity keep flowing even when you say no thanks? Or does it suddenly turn cold? A true giver gives without a contract. A predator gives with a ledger. Third, if you're over 60 and someone's generosity feels too good, too sudden, or too uncomfortably close, slow the flow. Take a step back. Talk to someone outside the situation. Remember, not all help is helpful. Some is just silent colonization with a smile and a scented candle. As Buddhists, we welcome compassion, but discernment is its twin flame. If someone hands you a gift and your gut whispers, "Why now?" Listen, because sometimes what looks like generosity is just burial planning in disguise, wrapped in ribbon, stamped urgent, and addressed to your front door. Part 7. The spiritual guru who's obsessed with your pain. Now, this one's tricky, because they don't come with knives, they come with crystals. They don't sabotage you with rumors or threats. They say they're here to hold space. They call themselves intuitive, empathic, enlightened. But if you look closely, you'll notice something strange. They only seem enlightened when you're crying. Welcome to the spiritual guru who's obsessed with your pain, the predator who wears mala beads instead of a mask, the one who offers you healing because your wounds are where they feed. See, in Buddhist psychology, there's the concept of upaya, skillful means. A true spiritual friend lifts your suffering with care, presence, and impermanence in mind. But this one? This one has built an entire altar out of your trauma, and they're charging admission. Especially in elder years when grief, regret, and loneliness start whispering louder, we become ripe targets for emotional leeches in spiritual clothing. They don't say, "Tell me your story." They say, "Tell me everything," again and again and again. Because they're not helping you let go. They're helping you stay broken so they can stay important. Take Richard, 79, lost his wife, joined a local healing circle. He met someone named Indigo. Yes, legally. She introduced him to sound baths, cacao ceremonies, and emotional exorcisms, most of which cost $89.95 per session. At first it felt like therapy, then it felt like performance. Every time he tried to laugh again, to move forward, she'd say, "But have you really processed your grief?" And back he'd go, into the pain, into the shadow work, into another $89.95 crying session. And Indigo? She glowed with purpose, because some people don't want you to heal. They want you to stay sick so they can keep playing doctor. Ram Dass used to joke, "If you think you're done suffering, just hang out with someone who profits from your wounds." Okay, he didn't say that, but he probably thought it. This person isn't always selling snake oil. Sometimes they just need to feel needed. They bask in your brokenness because it gives them a role, the healer. But here's the truth. Anyone who depends on your suffering for their self-worth is not a spiritual friend. They're a subtle captor with a singing bull. So how do you spot them? They don't like boundaries. If you say, "I'm actually feeling better," they'll say, "That's denial." If you shift the subject, they shift it right back. And if you laugh, they sigh. Because healing, to them, is a job. And you, my friend, are their full-time patient. Buddhism teaches letting go. But this person teaches holding on to grief, to shame, to every story you ever told them, like a collector keeping your sadness in Tupperware. So what do? Watch for people who always want you vulnerable. Test their joy when you're joyful. See what happens when you say, "Thank you, but I'm good." If they disappear, that wasn't a guru. That was an emotional squatter camping out in your heart's broken room. Because the true spiritual friend celebrates your freedom, not your pain. And when someone insists on being your healer forever, they might not be here to save your soul. They might just be feeding on it. So, maybe this hit closer to home than you expected. Maybe someone's face floated up in your mind somewhere between the monk who stares and the gift giver who's practically drafting your obituary. If that happened, don't ignore it. That's not paranoia. That's what the Buddhists call insight before suffering. But here's the gift in all of this. Yes, there's a gift. You woke up. You chose awareness over politeness, boundaries over guilt, dharma over drama. And that, my friend, is the start of liberation. Ram Dass would tell us, we're all just walking each other home. But some people are trying to walk you off a cliff with chamomile tea in hand. So walk wisely. Walk awake. If you found yourself nodding through this or laughing uncomfortably, then do two things. One, hit that little thumbs up. Not because we're needy, but because it tells the YouTube algorithm you value Buddhist dark comedy survival tips. Two, share this with one person who's just too nice. You know the one. The one who brings banana bread but stares a second too long. And if you're still with me right now, drop a comment below that just says, "Trust isn't free." Let's see who's paying attention. Because in a world full of masks, your instincts are the only face you can trust. Stay kind, stay wise, stay alive. And if someone starts giving you gifts for no reason, politely say thank you and count the spoons.